Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this guy, the Benchmade 950 Rift. So first, I do want to thank my buddy Peter for sending this along. This was something he kind of threw into the package at the last minute. It was like, hey, cool, I get to see a Rift. So that's nice. I'm a big fan of Peter's for sending this and a couple of other gems along. So here is, for size comparison, your Doug Ritter Griptilian here. That's the full-size grip. This is a Spyderco Delica, a Spyderco PM2, so you can see blade-wise we're a little bigger than the PM2 here, which is impressive. There's your PM2, your Shirogorov Neon, your Grimsmo Norseman, because I just want to show off, I'll be completely honest with you there. And, yeah, I think that'll do. Oh, and your Ontario Rat number 2, as always. So, not a small knife. But okay, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the bad, and the ugly of your Benchmade 950 Rift here. Okay, so on the good side, first off, this has full liners, which means that everything that you see here that is G10, directly underneath, there is metal, and I believe it to be a steel. And you can see those liners in the disassembly video, which I believe is going live tomorrow. So that's interesting. And it's a nice difference. A lot of Benchmades have a partial liner underneath there. Maybe you can see this, but there's, some metal here and in this general area, and there's a little flange that goes down this direction. But the rest of it is just, in this case, FRN, or on your 940. The rest of it's just aluminum. The rest of it's just G10 on some of the variants of carbon fiber. This is metal all throughout. So that makes this a very beefy knife. This is a knife that you're really going to struggle to hurt. And so that's nice. The steel on this guy is 154 cm steel, which is good to go. There's no real complaining about 154 cm. Yeah, there's some modern steels that are a little nicer, but no real issue here. And it's also going to be fairly easy to sharpen, which makes it good as a workhorse sort of knife. So that's nice. The geometry on the blade is pretty decent as a slicer in that it's got a fairly thin blade, all told, relative to some of your other knives, like even your PM2 here. PM2 blade is a little bit thicker. And it's got a nice wide grind to it, meaning that, there's a whole bunch of distance between the start and the end of the grind here. So I like that. The thumb stud's an issue. We'll talk about that later. But for the most part, this is a pretty decent slicer. The nice heavy blade on this guy goes well, and long blade goes really well with the axis lock. It makes this knife very easy, although I'm screwing it up right now, there we go, to manipulate with just the axis lock, where you pull the lock back, flick it out, and closed. And that's a lot easier than, say, on your Benchmade Valet, which is a small little axis lock. And so having this nice heavy blade makes it very, very fun, honestly, to play with the axis lock, and makes the axis lock really shine in this particular case. Ergonomically speaking, this is really nice. The handle is very nice in the hand in that, at least for my small hands, this bump goes right between these two fingers. Thumb locks in up here. It keeps you a little bit far away from the blade, but you're also not going to slide off of it. It's also very well textured, which is nice. This is not going anywhere. This is a good knife if you work in the Vaseline factory, so that's good. And also, I'll say the thumb stud, although it's got issues otherwise, is actually at a very good place for my hands to pop this knife open. So it is a pleasure to open with the thumb stud, in addition to using your more conventional axis lock sort of opening. At least more conventional to me. And then finally, this is an Osborne design. Warren Osborne actually passed away not too long ago here, but he's the very best thing that ever happened to Benchmade as far as I'm concerned, and made some of the most iconic designs for Benchmade that are out there, like your 940, your Emissary, and this is a very classic Osborne design, although a little bit more edgy compared to some of his other work. So, that's kind of a nice thing. That's some knife-making heritage that some other knives just aren't going to have. So there's your good. It's got these nice full liners. It's 154 cm, which is really good to go. The geometry is good for slicing. The heavy blade makes this a joy to use with the axis lock. The ergos are really nice on this guy, and it's an Osborne design. So let's jump into your bad. Unfortunately, it is a Benchmade, so that means you're going to have some fit and finish fouls. So for instance, your clip screws protrude out in here to the blade path. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to hit the blade, and in fact, I'm not seeing any evidence that they do at this point, but it is still a little bit on the, come on guys, you can use shorter screws. On the tip here, you can see that, well, hopefully you can see. Yeah, there we go. the whoever was doing this, they messed up on this part, but they still shipped it. So there's this kind of messed up grind right over here. Similarly, there's some asymmetry over here. And also, if you look at the disassembly video tomorrow, you'll see that the washers are warped. Meaning that the washers themselves should be, very flat, but instead they've kind of got a bit of a bow to them, which is not impressing me so much. That's something that you really can get right easily, and they didn't. So, not a big fan of that, but it's a modern Benchmade, so fit and finish is not going to be there. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the G10 pattern. It looks a little bit tap out to me. I'm not a big fan. You can dye this, though. Any G10 you can just dye with RIP fabric dye, so that might actually make for a cool effect. You could do red so that the white parts would turn red. So, it's kind of a wash there. This thing here I don't quite get. It's really deep to be a sharpening choil. I fear that if you're cutting into something, especially, this is actually apparently Eric Gless's justification for why Spyderco doesn't include a sharpening choil, but that in an emergency situation, whatever you're cutting might slide off and get caught in this choil, and this is a choil that's big enough that I'd actually worry about that. If you're cutting rope, it would be very easy for the rope to slide off and then land in this little gap here. And so, yeah, it's great to have a sharpening choil, but holy crap, guys. You could have done a little smaller, and this results in something that is damn near a finger choil, but isn't quite. So I really do wish that they'd have either pulled the grind a little back, or at least had this stick out a little. That just leaves me cold there. The knife is a little bit on the thick behind the edge sort of side. Hopefully you can see that in the sharpening choil, which I think they could have done a little better on that. And it's not that ugly because it's meant to be a pretty durable knife, and that'll help the edge from chipping. But still, this is a pretty big knife in the pocket, meaning that, if you just fold this up, you're in roughly the same size class as your Spyderco PM2 here. And that's not a small knife, and so this is similarly not a small knife. And then finally, on the bad side, this is a heavy knife. We are talking pretty big. We're talking 4.83 ounces. As opposed to on your PM2, where you're looking at 3.9, as opposed to on your Griptilian. You're looking at 3.9 again? Okay, yeah. I mean, this is a very heavy knife for what you're getting, and that's because of the full steel liners. And there are no drill outs or anything in the liners to reduce weight, so this is really heavily favoring beefitude, if you will, over lightweight. So there's your bad. There are fit and finish fouls because it's a modern Benchmade. The G10 pattern doesn't really do it for me. This sharpening choil is a little much and could be problematic. It's a bit thick behind the edge, it's a bit big in the pocket, and it is heavy. Let's jump into the ugly, and that's just two things. Okay, so on the ugly front, two things. First off, the thumb stud is perfectly positioned to open the knife, but it's absolutely terribly positioned once the knife is open, because the thumb stud is right in the slicing path. As you're slicing into something, whatever material you're cutting will need to flow over and past the blade. Thing is, here, it's going to hang up on this thumb stud. That's not a problem with knives that have some sort of a flush opening mechanism, like your Spidey hole, or a flipper, so there's no thumb stud, and it's not necessarily a problem with thumb stud knives, because you can design the knife in such a way that whatever you're cutting goes past the stud. But it's really ugly here, and as a result, this is going to hang up when slicing. Honestly, if this were my knife, I would actually look into trying to remove the thumb stud entirely and rely on Axis lock opening for this, because I think it would make it a much more stellar slicer, and frankly a better knife in general. But that is pretty ugly right there. That's something they really needed to do differently in their design, and it's a big compromise. Other issue right now is not with the Rift specifically, but with Benchmade on the whole, and that is that Benchmade's quality control is terrible in 2016. Absolutely tragic. If you just buy a knife online and have it shipped to you, there is a reasonable chance that you're going to get a knife that is really poorly put together. Basically, you need to think of Benchmade right now as a company that doesn't do quality checking at all. And that sucks. They have good customer service, so there's a chance that if you pay some extra money, ship it back to them, they'll send you back one that's pretty good. But you're really rolling the dice. And so, although this is a knife I do recommend, it's a knife that you have to buy in person to make sure that you get one that doesn't have side-to-side blade play, vertical blade play, where the blade is actually centered. This blade does. Most of them will not, or at least many of them will not. So that's really ugly, is that you can't just buy this guy sight unseen. You need to go someplace to check one out and get one that's worth a damn, or be ready to turn around and send it back to Benchmade the minute you receive it so that they can do the quality control they should have been doing in the first place. So there's your ugly. The thumb stud is right in the middle of the blade path, and you just can't buy a Benchmade sight unseen right now because their quality control division hasn't shown up to work in 2 years. So there you go. Let's talk about the final conclusion here. So this is a really compelling knife, and I did not expect to be saying that today. You can think about it. It's big, it's beefy, it's strong. It's meant for really, it's a hard-use tool. And it's not like survival, Adamas, fixed blade, any of that stuff kind of hard use, but it's a damn good tool that's going to keep up with whatever you throw at it. And so in that way, this is a really great knife. And in a lot of ways, what I look at this as is the 940's hardcore brother. The 940 series is a great series of knives, but especially the G10 carbon fiber variants coming out lately all have a little bit of gentleman's folded DNA in them. And you know, the partial liners, things like that, they're just not as hardcore as this guy is. So if you like the 940 idea, but you want something that's really bomb-proof, this is a good way to go. The price on it is $170, which is not good, bad, or ugly. It's just kind of fine. It makes sense. I wouldn't be hurt paying $170 for this guy. Do I recommend it? Yes, but with the caveat that you gotta do it in a brick and mortar store where you can check for centering, you can check for blade play issues, things like that. And you know, honestly, I do wish this was being made by a better knife company. It's 2016 now, so maybe one of these days Benchmade will hire a quality control team and give that a shot. But for the moment, this is a great knife if you can get one that's good. So if you can go to a brick and mortar, you can order it used from somebody you trust. You can, you know, if you're willing to order it online and then send it back to Benchmade, if you get one they screwed up, then great. I highly recommend it. But between the thumb stud and the quality control issues, I'm going to have to stop short of gem on this one. But nonetheless, it's a great tool knife, and it's something that surprised me with how much I do like it. So hey, Peter, thanks for sending this along. Hey, Benchmade, get your crap together. And hey, the rest of you, have a wonderful rest of your day.